What's going on, everyone? It's Cody again, and we're back with another server series video. Today we're going to be going a little more over Active Directory and DHCP, more so. So let's get right in. So DHCP, I wish I could have made a slide for this, but I decided not to because it's super quick, 2-minute conversation. So DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, and what that is that it allows a server to sit there and listen for computers wanting an IP address. And once it hears a computer wanting an IP address, it sends them an IP address, and the server keeps track of all of those IP addresses on a network. So if you have 200 computers that are requesting new IP addresses, so this server will take it, be like, yo, here's this IP, and it'll keep track of all of those for you, which is super nice. The other cool thing about DHCP is that Windows has an offering for that, so that if you have like an Active Directory controller and stuff like that, you can integrate some of the administration features with Active Directory to keep that under control. So enough of me talking about it, let's get right in and do it. So right here you see we have our 3 virtual machines, our 2 test clients that are asleep, and my domain controller here. I'm going to install the DHCP role on the domain controller. Some bigger enterprises use another entire virtual machine just for DHCP. At this demo, I'm really not going to care where it goes, honestly. So I'm going to go ahead and log into this. And remember from before, we signed in as me because I didn't want to use the built-in administrator anymore. If you haven't made that change, I highly recommend you do. Like I said before, it's a huge security risk if you don't. So let's go ahead and get signed in here, let everything load up. This is the first time I started this virtual machine since the last series, so it might take just a couple seconds longer to get everything filled in than it needs to. So we'll just give it some time here. Alright, looks like we're ready to go. So I'm gonna breeze through this just because I explained everything last time on picking server, or picking what server you want to install it on, picking what you're installing. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click through as fast as I can. So we're gonna go to add roles and features, next. I'm gonna click on that DHCP server. Asks us if we want to add these tools as a feature. We're gonna click add features. Going to click next again because we don't need any extra features other than the one it gave us. This is just giving us a little overview of what DHCP is and what we're doing. Since I already explained that to you, we're going to hit next and we're going to click install. That was fast. I will be right back when this gets done installing, and we will. Alrighty, we are back from the reboot, or not reboot, excuse me, the installation. There's a one little task that it has us do afterwards. I'm going to go ahead and do it real quick. Just to click the hyperlink that says complete DHCP configuration. This brings us to the post-install configuration wizard for the DHCP server. So basically what this allows us to do is, like I was saying before, a little bit of administration with the server itself within Active Directory. It adds what this wizard does is it installs or adds 2 groups to the Active Directory forest that lets you add users to each of them. So one of them being the administrators and one of them being users. That way, if you have a dedicated team to manage DHCP, you can actually add them to these groups and they can get into DHCP on the Windows server itself and look at it and change stuff, and if they need to, and look at different scopes and stuff like that. So we're gonna go ahead and click next, and when we want to authorize this DHCP server for this Active Directory domain, I'm going to go ahead and click use the following users' credentials. I'm going to use mine because I'm logged in and I have enough power, quote unquote, to promote this server. So I'm going to go ahead and click commit. Alright, and it looks like it committed perfect. Now, like I said before, if I said it before, excuse me. As soon as you hit commit, it almost instantly gets it done because it's just, there's not very much of it has to change with an Active Directory. So now that that's done, we can go ahead and click close, and we can go ahead and close out of this, and we're going to go to tools, and we're going to go to DHCP. Alright, let me expand this so it's a little easier to understand, or see, sorry, not understand. So this here is the server that we're on right now. And we have two options here, IPv4 or IPv6. I'm not going to talk about IPv6 in this series. We're just going to stay strictly on IPv4. So if you click on that, it tells you to add a scope, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to right click, we're going to go to new scope, and this is a nice little wizard that'll bring us through it. So a scope is a set of IP addresses that you want to give out to your network, so, or for computers to use. So the DHCP server here that we have will assign those IP addresses as they're needed. So let's go ahead and click next, give it a name, name it default, and for a description, make sure you always document stuff, because documentation is everything. Even if it's default and then default scope for the description, like, can't really get more in depth than that. So let's go ahead and click next. So for the range, quote unquote, of IP addresses that we want to give, it just depends on how many computers you have in your network and how big you want your scope to be in general. So if you want your scope to be, let's just do a basic home network. So a home network will have a beginning IP address of usually like a 192.168.something.something. So with that being said, usually you only can get about 100 or 150 devices in that scope before that server starts to get, or before it starts running out of addresses to give out. So we're going to give, let's see, for demonstration purposes, and because I only have two machines that are going to be requesting DHCP server addresses, because it's just these two test clients here, I'm just going to give it a very, very small chunk of a bigger sized network. So I'm going to start it with 192.168.20.20. And I'm going to go to 192.168.20.60. Sure. And as you see, as soon as I got done filling out this top start IP address, the length auto-filled for us. I'm not going to talk too much about what the length is asking about, but I will later if you guys want me to. Actually, drop a comment below if you think I should explain that a little more and what that actually means. But for now, I'm just going to leave it as default. The default length is 24 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. So we're going to go ahead and click next. Now here is really nice. It's a really nice way to exclude addresses if you need to. So for example, you have, let's go back so I can talk about the scope that we have. So the scope is from .20 to .60. One, I'm not going to say the first three because we all know the first three by now. So the first three parts of the address, I mean. So let's say you have something on, and you have like 10 devices that you don't want to have anyone else use their IP addresses, and you statically assign them. So let's say that's like 30 or 50 to 60, that top part of the scope. So what you can do with this next screen here is you can actually add those IP addresses to a exclusion range, so that way this server, when it looks for addresses to give, it will actually say, hey, you cannot use these at all no matter what, don't assign them. So that's what I just did. I'm going to start at 50 and I'm going to end at 60, so that whole top part of that scope that we just assigned. I'm going to click add. That's cool. We're going to leave that alone. We're going to leave the subnet delay in milliseconds at 0 for its default because we only have one DHCP server. If we were to have two, that's where the subnet delay would come in. So a subnet delay is basically when it's not the same on either server, on one server to the other. One of them usually has a higher delay than the other one. So basically, if the subnet delay in milliseconds is 5 or something, and this one is 0, if you have another server that one is 5 and one is 0, the one that is 0 will probably get the request first. If it can't handle the request, it'll then shoot it back, and then the server that has 5 millisecond delay, a subnet delay, will grab it and assign it the IP address and update accordingly if they're in tandem. But for now, like I said, I'm going to leave it at 0, and we're going to click next. So a lease is how long that computer has that address, excuse me. So the default is 8 days. I usually keep it on 8 days. I don't need to extend it at all very much often. And if I do past 8 days, then I usually make a reservation for it, which we will go over later. So we're just going to leave it at default. And click next. And now it's going to get into the configuration part of the network itself. So let's see here. Let me try to think. Do we want to configure these now? Yes, we do. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that yes, I want to configure these options now is selected. We're going to click next, and we're going to see if we want a router. We're going to add a router or default gateway. So these settings, sorry, let me go back just a little bit. These settings that we're about to configure are the settings that will automatically pre-fill along with the IP address that the server gives you. So this stuff gives you your router, your default gateway, your DNS servers, for example, and your subnet mask as well. So right now I don't have a router on this network because it's a host-only network. It doesn't reach outside of the internet or to the internet. So I'm going to go ahead and just skip this for now, because if I try to add it, then it'll make a whole mess for me later. I'm going to go ahead and click next. So the domain name and the DNS server. So the domain name is really cool because if you have a DHCP server running and there is a Windows client, or even some Mac devices I still think can grab this, when you click down here to look at your network stuff, it'll automatically say codytest.com or whatever your domain name will be. So we're going to go ahead and leave that as the domain name, just so that it's easier for like the end user to even troubleshoot. So like if you're on a support call and say, hey, what does your internet say? Does it say codytest.com? Does it say your domain? If so, then that means that it's at least getting an IP address or attempting to grab the configuration settings from the DHCP server. So we're going to leave that. We're going to add a DNS server to the network, and that DNS server will be the one we're using right now. So what we can do is we can actually type in the domain name or the DNS record, the A record, or the name of the computer, quote unquote, to here. dco1.codytest.com. See if I spelled that right. It's v16-2c1. Okay, we're going to click on resolve. And as you can see, it automatically resolved. And it looks like it's already been added into here, so we're not going to worry too much about that. When you're in an enterprise environment, however, you're going to want to have another DNS server entry, just in case if your DNS server goes down, your whole network doesn't go down, because if it can't resolve names or get outside to the internet to resolve names because you don't have another DNS record assigned or a DNS server assigned in these configurations, then it won't be able to even translate a name so that you can get to it. So I like to use quad 1.1.1.1. It's a fairly new DNS server area. I don't know if this is going to validate, like I said, because this isn't on the outside network. So let's see if it does or not. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video because this could take some time. And it looks like it said, I'm not going to pause it anymore. It says that the IP address quad 1's is not available. It's not a valid DNS address, quote unquote. If I was connected to the internet, it would be. So we're just going to go ahead and say, do you still want to add it? We're going to say yes. That way it gets added to the list. So here as well, the order of these DNS servers matter. If you're going to add a computer to the domain or use any sort of domain DNS servers, then you have to have your internal DNS server first, no matter what, or else it will not. It'll go out to the internet first to try to find it, and it won't go to the next server down. So we're going to go ahead and keep this as is, and we're going to keep our 172.16.10.10 address, which is the address of this machine that we're working with here, and we're going to click next. So the WINS server is a super old way of doing things. Most people don't use WINS servers anymore at all, so I'm just going to go ahead and skip over this whole section. and it's going to ask if we want to activate this scope now. I'm going to go ahead and activate this scope. Usually if you want to do more configuration outside of this little wizard, then you'd hit no and go into there and look at that stuff and change it. But I'm just going to go ahead and say yes, and we're going to finish, and we have a new scope. Alright, cool. So now, in theory, if I were to have set everything up correctly, bear with me, it might be wrong. I don't think it is, but we'll see. You can see, so the address pool here is the first part of the configuration where we were figuring out our range for distribution and then our exclusions and stuff like that. So all of those will be here. The address leases is where all of the clients will be once they grab an IP address. This is basically the database viewer, quote unquote, of the whole lease database, and it'll tell you when the lease expires, the IP address that it grabbed, the name of the computer, all that kind of wonderful stuff. Reservations is a cool thing. So basically a reservation is, like I was saying before, if you have a computer that gets assigned a DHCP address and you want to keep that IP address forever, you can actually add a reservation either manually like this, or once it gets into the lease pool, we can actually right click on it and make a reservation for it, which I'll show you later. Scope options are all those little extra options that we configure, like the domain name and the DNS servers, and then any policies that we have. That's for more of like radius and 802.1x wired authentication, which we won't cover in this series at all, unfortunately. If you'd like to see that covered, though, leave a comment below. Comment below on anything you think I should do later, or any suggestions that you have for me in these videos, by the way. Will help me out a lot. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video for now, and we will come back and we will add the two clients. We will see if they will grab an address or not. Alright, and we are back. Let's see, where were we? We were going to start, we were going to see if the two test clients would grab an IP address. That's right. So let's head over to those two. I'm going to do them one at a time, just so that it's easier to do on my end and it's easier to show you. So these haven't been added to the domain yet, but we will once we grab the DHCP server information, or the address and stuff from DHCP. So this is the local admin. I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And while this one's signing in, I'm going to sign in on this one, just so that this one's ready for us when we get to it. This will take just a couple seconds. Okay, and it looks like we're good to go. Let's see if it grabbed a network or IP address. I'm going to head into the control panel. If you just hit the Windows key and R and type control, it'll actually take you to the control panel. I like the OG control panel. The new one is weird. Doesn't give me all the options that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and go into here. Change adapter settings. Just take a look at the Ethernet adapter on the first test client here. We go to details. It looks like here the 169.254 network, quote unquote network, is the network that it uses when it cannot find an IP address. So looks like we can try again. So what I'm going to do is you can do two things to get this to start grabbing an IP address again. You can come into properties, double click on IP version 4, and just toggle these from obtain automatically to use. You can do that, or you can head into the control panel. I'm going to do the control panel way because it's a lot faster to do. So I'm going to hit Windows key and R again on my keyboard, and I'm going to type CMD to open command prompt. And here we are on the black screen command prompt. Everyone hates it. Okay. Now that that's out of the way, we're going to type ipconfig, all one word, ipconfing. We're going to do a space, and then we're going to do a /renew. Now what this does is it releases the IP address that it currently has for DHCP, and it attempts to grab a new address from the DHCP server. So we're going to click next, or enter, sorry, if I can type. Let's see. What did I type? What did I miss? IP config. That's not a word. Let's try this again. So now it's attempting to grab a IP address. We're going to see if it does or not. I'm getting a bunch of notifications from antivirus telling me that I'm out of date, which it probably is, but we're not on an outside network, so it doesn't matter. Okay, and it looks like it's going to fail on trying to get a new IP address, and I think I know the reason why. So the initial configuration of my domain controller is on a completely different network than what I'm trying to use for a scope. So I'm going to leave this for a second and show you guys. So let's hit the control panel and I'll pull this up. Hold on just a second. Okay. So my DHCP server scope is 192.168.20.0. That's the network we're using. But the address that my server, the domain controller, and the DHCP server are on a 172.16.10 network, or 172.16 network. And because of that, it's having an issue detecting this scope because I don't have it routed correctly within my virtual machine environment. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this scope that we have and remake a scope that has this 172.16.10.10 network. So I'm going to pause this and I'm going to remake a scope. It's going to be the exact same setup, so I'm just going to refer you guys to the first part of this, and I will come back when I have that done. Alright, and we are back. I was able to get the DHCP scope reconfigured, and let's try to grab an IP address again. So you can see here we got our 172.116.0.0 network set up here. So that's within the same subnetwork, excuse me, of this server here. So I'm going to go head back over to the test client. I'm just going to hit the up arrow to bring back that same command, and we're going to hit renew. This should happen a lot quicker, and as you can see, Windows has picked up an address, and it looks like it assigned 172.16.10.21 for a network. And it looks like here, even our little pop-up here says codytest.com, so that tells you already that it has grabbed the correct information. So we're going to go ahead and hit no, and I'm going to go ahead and close out a command prompt and close out all of these windows, and I'm going to head back to my domain controller and my DHCP server, my everything server, let's just call it that from now on. And we're going to head over to address leases. So as you can see here, it says there are no items to show in this view. Go ahead and refresh that, right click, and it looks like, wow, that's fast. It looks like test client 1 was able to grab the 172.16.10.21 address, and it looks like our second test client here, I didn't have to do anything, and it looks like it already picked up an address, 172.16.10.20 network, or IP address. So hey, that's cool. One less thing to worry about. So that's basically how easy it is to configure DHCP. So let's actually dig into reservations now just a little bit, just on the bare minimum of how they work. So like I said before, you can either right click and make a new reservation, type in the name, whatever, the IP address that you want to give it within the scope. Has to be within the scope though, or else it won't stick it. Or you can go to the address leases, actually right click on whatever client you want to give a reservation to, and you can literally just click add a reservation, and it automatically fills in all of that stuff for you, and you can see here that we have an entry for that test client. But if you want to get rid of the reservation, you can just right click and delete, click yes, and it just returns it to the pool. Same IP address and everything. So I believe that wraps it up for this video. So that was just a continued AD, just a little bit, just talking about how those groups work with DHCP and mostly DHCP. Leave a comment below on what you think I should do later, what you think I should improve on in these videos. Let me hear I want to hear what you guys have to say, because this is brand new to me. YouTube is all new to me. Leave a like if you're down for that. Subscribe as well if you'd like to receive more notifications and more videos from me. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Peace.